Welcome to You Not Crazy Conversations of Hope. We are on episode 8. This is our final episode for the season. I hope that you've enjoyed yourself so far. Listen, we have been talking about relationships, all right, this whole season. So today we are talking about the relationships with ourselves, guys, right? We can work on all those other relationships and the dynamics that are at play. But we need to make sure we focus on the relationship with ourselves. And so we're going to talk about how therapy can help reframe those negative thoughts and behaviors that hinders personal growth within ourselves. Listen, I'm so excited. Today's guest is La'Ebony Leggins. Guys, she holds a special place in my heart. She is also my family, guys. So I'm just so happy to have her. Listen, let me tell you a little bit about her, okay? She is a dedicated community leader and advocate here in Orlando, Florida. She is a graduate of FAMU. All right, where she honed her leadership skills and commitment to service. Professionally, La'Ebony has demonstrated her leadership abilities as a manager at unlearn, a role that allowed her to impact the educational sector in a positive way, guys. Beyond her professional endeavors, La'Ebony is deeply involved in community development. She's been a member of NLC, which is our New Leaders Council here in Orlando, which is an organization dedicated to training and supporting change leaders here in Central Florida. Listen, La'Ebony's commitment to her personal growth and empowerment is evident in her creative pursuits as well. Listen, she continues to make a significant impact, embodying the values of leadership, service, and empowerment. I am so honored and proud to know her, guys. Listen, so let's talk, guys. Listen, many of us struggle with internal narratives that hold us back. So today we're going to explore how therapy can help us rewrite those narratives, create a healthier and a more self-compassionate version of ourselves. All right, so let's discuss understanding the relationship with ourselves. Okay, so our relationship with ourselves is the most influential factor in our overall mental health and well-being. Right. It shapes how we experience the world and interact with others. It influences everything from our emotional state to our behavior. Guys, it shapes our self-perception. That is how we see and understand ourselves, guys. Listen, it's about understanding our strengths, our flaws, and our worth. Okay, so this is all happened based upon our self-perception. All right, so it is that internal image within our head that is formed by a combination of our experiences, society influences, and even feedback from others. So when our self-perception is positive, guys, we tend to feel more confident, capable, deserving of love and success. However, guys, when we have a negative self-perception, that can lead to feelings of inadequacy, self-doubt, low self-esteem, which ultimately impacts our mental health, guys. And that is what shapes our self-talk, which is what we call an inner dialogue that we have with ourselves, whether conscious or subconscious. So that can be positive or negative. So ultimately, positive self-talk promotes self-compassion. It motivates us to tackle challenges and reinforces our sense of capability. But then on the other hand, again, negative self-talk often involves critical, judgmental thoughts. Like, I hear people say, I'm not good enough, or I'll never succeed. Ultimately, these thoughts can increase anxiety, depression, and feelings of helplessness, right? Which can reinforce negative beliefs about ourselves. And once we shape those beliefs about ourselves, those is what turn into behaviors, all right? And so what we want to do is work on that, because beliefs is what creates what in therapy world we call self-fulfilling prophecies. Is when we would believe we're incapable or undeserving, and we avoid challenges, or we settle for less, or we sabotage our own success. And this ultimately, guys, becomes a cycle of reinforcing the negative belief, creating a cycle of self-doubt and stagnation. So we have to address negative beliefs and the impact that it can have on our behavior. So I'm so grateful again, Ebony, that you are here and having
Thank
this
you for having me.
conversation. I appreciate it, right? And so with that being said, I know that you have been in the process of therapy.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
so how would you describe your relationship with yourself before starting therapy? Were there any thought patterns or behaviors that held you back?
So before therapy, I was very negative. Everything was my fault. I felt like I wasn't good enough.
Okay.
When things would happen in life, I'm wondering, like, I felt very much punished. I felt like I was dealing with karma from past decisions I've made, and that it was just, I took on everybody else's problem. Everything was my fault. So I was in a low place before I started therapy. I smiled, but I was inside. I was in a very low place.
That's really good. And oftentimes, what you're saying is that it sounds like there was some negative thoughts that became behavior patterns for you along the way. And so I want to talk a little bit about what that looks like, guys. And so we call those cognitive distortions. It is when our experiences impact us in a way that it shapes and frames our beliefs about ourselves, about the world, and just ultimately how we see the world. And it can either be done through things such as like it's either all good or it's all bad, right? Or, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Well, maybe if I shoulda or coulda did this, then this and that could have happened, right? And so I know you say you had went, but prior to therapy, the challenges that you were facing with your thoughts. What would you say, when did you realize that your thoughts were affecting your actions that led you to therapy?
So, that led me to therapy, I would say I would rather talk about like when I was in therapy. Okay. So what led me to therapy first was just life. Okay. I was going through a lot of stuff in life. I had gone through some very traumatic situations, and I felt like it was my fault. Like I brought it on myself. I was the reason, because I didn't make good choices. I felt dumb, like I should have known better. And that's why I was in those negative situations. But it was when I first went to therapy, I realized I'm not crazy. And it's crazy. That's the name of the podcast.
Not crazy.
Because I really, the first thing I told the lady when I went there was, listen, ma'am, I'm not crazy, but I got some things going on. I need some help. I need some help. And she was like, well, why would you think you're crazy? I said, well, we grew up. You keep your business your business.
That's good.
You keep what's going on, you just deal with it.
That's good.
And I said, you just deal with it on your own. You have to be strong. And I was talking about, this was recently after my father passed. And I got emotional about it. And I started crying. And immediately I was like wiping my tears. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I started apologizing to the therapist for crying. And she was like, why are you apologizing? I was like, I'm not weak.
That's good.
Crying is a sign of weakness. And I was like, I'm not weak. So I'm sorry for crying. I'm not weak. And we explored that. And it was just hearing her repeat back to me, you think you're weak because you're crying because your dad died, really was like a light bulb moment for me.
I love that. So it was in the process of therapy that you recognized certain behaviors were no longer beneficial for you.
Right.
All right. And I like how you said the concept of unlearning behaviors. You were doing things based upon what society and culture has taught you. And sometimes being taught these things are inadvertently, right? We just see maybe our parents not crying. So then it's like, okay, well, then we don't cry. Or something you said about the denial messages where, that are taught among kids growing up, where it's like, okay, what happens in this house, stay in this house. Right. And so that teaches anybody that, okay, well, what's happened within me, possibly I need to also keep within me as well, right?
Just deal with it.
And just deal with it, right? And so not knowing that can be harmful to us, right? And so far it sounds like the process of therapy began to kind of help you rewire even the way you were seeing things, right? And habits, right? And
Absolutely.
so ultimately, you know, when you think about what behaviors did you have to unlearn, and how has that journey been for you?
So one of the main things I had to unlearn was that it wasn't my fault. The things that I went through in life, the trauma, the different things, I'm not responsible for how someone else treats me.
That's good.
So I had to learn. And plus, I think I'm awesome anyway.
You awesome, girl. You is
it's
awesome.
Like something is wrong with them,
right?
Not me. But I had to really learn that, and then I had to learn boundaries. I realized I didn't have boundaries. I was very much people pleaser because I felt like everything was my fault. I felt like if I just make them happy, you know, it will be better. People would treat me better. So those are some of the things, and just feeling down about myself when things didn't go the way I wanted it to go or I expected to go. Feeling like I was the sole reason, feeling like it was something I did. And the biggest thing was, if I can be honest, the biggest thing was as far as marriage, you know, feeling like it was my fault because by a certain age, I'm supposed to be married. I'm supposed to have these things. And then my therapist said, well, who said that? Who said you're supposed to have, you know, these things at this time? Who said that something's wrong with you? Because I felt like something was wrong with me because I don't have these things at this age. So I think it was just a lot of negativity and relearning. Whoever society or whatever you've been through in life, you have to change your thoughts about yourself. So
I love that. I definitely agree that, you know, a lot of times our upbringing can cause us to have certain behaviors, and we, being in that environment, sometimes can feel as though those behaviors are functional and healthy, right? But I think it's in the process of therapy where we're kind of talking through those things that we get the ability to kind of say, okay, well, maybe this type of thought process or these behavior doesn't yield itself to a positive outcome, right? And it sounds like that was part of your journey. So thank you so much for sharing that. And so what advice would you give to someone who feels stuck in harmful patterns but is afraid to seek therapy?
A good friend of mine told me that you can't heal what you hide, and that stuck with me. That's good. So when you are trying to heal and when you're trying to get to a different place in life, you have to be really willing to reveal that. So there are small steps that you can take. Find a trusted friend. I have a good circle, but I had to learn that it's okay to say I'm not okay.
That's good.
Because that's another thing. So I learned, hey, I'm not okay. Can I talk about this? Also journaling. But one thing my therapist taught me, I used to write and journal, and sometimes I didn't have time to always write. So when I'm in the car by myself, you put on that voice memo, and you can just talk about how you're feeling, talk about what you're going through, and then later go back and listen to it and be like, oh, okay, at this point, this is what I was experiencing, but it's a way to purge and to get it out. So before you even go to therapy, those small steps, but go to therapy. It is so refreshing. It is not, I really know now I'm not crazy for real.
Yeah.
But just like you take care of your physical body, it makes sense to take care of your psyche, to take care of your mental. Like that's important. So I think going to therapy, but if you're still kind of on the fence about it, just find you an outlet. Don't hold it in. Find an outlet.
Listen, I love how you said, you know, what happened to us is not our fault. But how can we truly heal what we don't reveal, guys, right? And I love how you validated, the listeners validate me that sometimes it's okay not to be okay, right? And I think sometimes in society and culture, I would just say from the concept of being Black women, right? There's this
Absolutely.
ideology about being the strong Black woman,
yes,
right? But I think strength lies also in asking for help.
I had to learn that.
Yeah.
I literally had to learn that. Because you want to be the strong, well, not want to be, I think it's just kind of bestowed upon us.
That's good.
That we're the strong Black woman. Mm-hmm. You learn to, like I said in the beginning, deal with things yourself. Mm-hmm. You learn that I'm supposed to be able to handle this. And so asking for help makes you feel weak. Mm-hmm. But I had to learn that being vulnerable and saying, hey, picking up the phone, calling your cousin, your good friend, mm-hmm. I'm not okay, I'm struggling with this. Mm-hmm. That's the strongest thing you can do, mm-hmm. instead of suffering in silence. But I had to learn that, and it's definitely because of that strong Black woman. Mm-hmm. And I decided, look, I don't want to be strong.
Right.
I want to be soft.
I want to be soft.
I don't want to be strong.
Soft. Right.
Teach me how to be soft.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think it's key with that concept, guys, is that is a cognitive distortion. Mm-hmm. It's this ideology that the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, like I should do this, I need to do this, right? Those are things that limit us from being able to take care of ourselves, to ask for help, mm-hmm. right? Because there's this idea that we are these superwomen. No. It's important that we ask for help. We live in community. Community is basically saying we can't just drink from one well. And sometimes we drink from the well within ourselves, but that's not helping us at times, right? And so mm-hmm. asking for help, I also believe, is a part of self-care, self-compassion, right? Yeah. And so self-compassion, is the way we transform how we engage with ourselves and the world. It includes us talking kindly to ourselves, accepting that we do have flaws, accepting that we are not perfect, right? It is recognizing that our worth is not just determined by our achievements. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I really want to just talk about the concept of self-compassion. So how do you think therapy has changed the way you see yourself today compared to before?
Well, first, I know that I'm valued.
Yes,
and that
I love that. You are somebody.
I am.
Yes.
Listen, before I would say it, but I really didn't feel that way, if I'm being honest. Mm-hmm. You can say that, but I feel that now. Mm-hmm. I know that now. Mm-hmm. Also that my feelings matter.
I love that.
I used to feel like putting other people before me mm-hmm. Was what you were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And I felt like when I acknowledged my feelings or took time for myself that I was being selfish. Mm-hmm. But it's not being selfish, it's needed. I have to take care of me. Mm-hmm. I matter. I also learned that you mentioned about flaws, mm-hmm. that all of my flaws and my imperfections, mm-hmm. they make up the beautiful part of me.
Yes.
They make this masterpiece that's called La'Ebony. Yes. So I love that. I had to learn that though. Mm-hmm. Instead of being so critical about myself, everything, oh, you got this there, mm-hmm. that ain't shaped the way it's supposed to shape, that type mm-hmm. of thing. Mm-hmm. I had to learn that's the beauty of me.
I love that.
So yeah.
I love that. So that the sum of who we are is going to have some imperfections, some mistakes, but that doesn't take away our beauty. These are just pieces that make us who we are, right? And so I love that. And so in order to really strengthen your mental wellness, it is very important that you give yourself self-compassion, mm-hmm. that you recognize that you are not the sum of your mistakes. That's just a piece of who you are, but that doesn't define who you are and your worth, right? And so for someone listening today who may want to start a journey but feels hesitant, what would you say would be the first step that you would recommend in the process?
If you know somebody that has already been on their journey with therapy, I would ask them how it's changed. That's a good step.
That's
I would also talk to the people in your tribe. Make sure that you have, even if your tribe is only one person, talk to that person and have them to, explain to them what you're feeling and just take the first step. I think it's very important that we, as Black people, really take care of our mental. We have a lot that's going on, but we can make it better if we just talk to someone. And these people are, therapists, they're trained to do that. They're trained to listen. They got it.
They got it,
They
right?
got it.
And it's confidential, guys. So what's said in therapy stays in therapy, of course, with the clauses if you attempt to harm yourself or harm someone else. All right, I had to kind of throw that out, right?
Yeah, right.
But, something you said, Key, about the concept of community, and I know we talked about this in a previous episode, but when I think about, taking that first step towards therapy, because again, it can be scary, especially with the stigma, and that's what we're trying to break. But ultimately, I think about feedback. If you have somebody that cares about you, loves you, you have to be open to feedback, right? So I heard this quote says that the measure of growth that you have is dependent on how much feedback you can accept, right? And so for people that loves you, I think being open to asking them, things about maybe that they see in you that you may not see in yourself, right? Because that can be the catalyst that's needed to even say, okay, well, thank you for the feedback. I'll go begin to do the work on this, right? And so I think that is another step as well.
And those who truly love you and really love you and have your best interest in heart, they're going to tell you when they see something happening.
Yeah.
They're not going to let you run into a brick wall and not say anything if they truly love you.
Right.
So that too makes it easier to accept the feedback because it's coming from a genuine place. So it makes it easier to accept, okay, well, maybe I need to change this because that person, they love you and they have your best interests at heart.
So, I appreciate this conversation, and I know someone's really going to take heed and listen to this. So here's some takeaways I got from what you're saying, that therapy ultimately helps you identify and reframe negative thought patterns. Breaking harmful behaviors leads to personal growth, and self-compassion is key to having a healthy relationship with yourself. So guys, listen, remember, with self-awareness, we can change our self-perception and our self-talk by practicing self-compassion, challenging those negative beliefs, and replacing harmful self-talk with more balanced, supportive thoughts. Guys, we ultimately can begin to reshape how we see ourselves and ultimately how we interact with the world. This shift can have a profound impact on our mental health, which can foster a more resilient and empowered mindset. So, La'Ebony, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. I enjoyed talking with you. I enjoyed this.
Look, I want a hug. I'm a hug.
Oh, let's take a hug. All right, guys. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe to YouTube. You never know who needs to hear this conversation. Listen, you're not crazy. This conversation can really help people understand that you are not crazy, guys. So I hope this has been a conversation. I hope, again, make sure you share. Until next time, we'll see you guys next season. Thank you for tuning in to You Not Crazy, Conversations of Hope.